Hi guys, so today I'm going to be talking to you about why I don't think you should be trying to win when playing games, tabletop games, board games. I want to talk to you about gaming achievements and how they apply to tabletop games. So I'm going to call this tabletop achievements. Basically, if you ever played video games before, Xbox, PlayStation, what have you, a lot of times you'll maybe accomplish something cool and you'll see a little achievement unlocked. Achievement unlocked, collect 1 million credits, etc. I think that applies to tabletop gaming as well, even though it's not directly incorporated into tabletop gaming. And why I think trying to adopt a mentality of tabletop achievements can enhance your gameplay beyond that of simply becoming a winner. First off, a lot of games have a huge number of players. One of my favorite games, Rising Sun, you can play 6. Only one person can win. So are you telling me that 5 people are going to have a miserable time because they aren't going to be the winners? Well, obviously not. If you've played board games, wargaming, tabletop games, for a long enough time, you've known that most of the time you're not going to be the winner. But that doesn't mean it's miserable because people keep playing. So it's all about having fun. And one way I think that we can try to enhance our fun with these games is with achievements. So first, I'm going to talk about a couple of these achievements and basically, things that maybe you can be looking for in your games to make them a little bit more satisfying to you. Especially if you've ever, played a board game and kind of been a little upset that you didn't win, then this is definitely for you. First thing I want to talk about is how did it look, right? Now, obviously, all of these are about the fun factor of the games, but how did your game look? A lot of the games that I play involve miniatures and are very thematic and visually pleasing games. So if the art was good, if the board was good, if the board looked cool, a bad thing might be, let's say we played Rising Sun and nobody bought any monsters out. That might not look as good. If I was playing X-Wing and it was a TIE Swarm against another TIE Swarm, or maybe just X-Wings versus X-Wings, and there was no different units and not a lot of variation of miniatures on the board, then maybe it wouldn't look as cool. But if maybe you brought a list, or you had a strategy that involved having like some big and small units or different stuff. Maybe there was a themed unit that worked together because it was all stuff from the Battle of Battle of Endor. Maybe you did something that just thematically went together and looked visually pleasing from some other standpoint. So how did the battle look? Did you take any pictures of your game during gameplay? Was it a cool looking game board? Was the setup cool? Did you have like huge units moving in and then small units making the huge units look bigger? Things like that can make a game visually appealing and can be satisfying to play. If you've ever taken a photograph of your game, because you thought this board looked cool, then maybe that's one achievement for you. It looked cool. So visually appealing is definitely the first tabletop achievement of this video. Next up is deployment. Let's talk about deployment. Now this one is going to apply a lot more to wargaming like X-Wing, Armada, Legion, rather than all general board games, but it kind of applies to the setup in the beginning. Did you get a good deployment? And that can be maybe you placed your units in the right spot. If you've ever set up a unit and then instantly regretted after everything was set up and you didn't like the way that you were starting out, you're like, oh, I screwed up at the beginning. A lot of games, they say turn 0, or like at least the planning and setup before you get into the game can sometimes make or break the game. And even if you end up losing, did you have a good setup? Are you proud of the way that you set up, or do you think that there's something you can learn from that? And even if you're not super proud of the way that you set up, if you realize what you've done wrong, you can still partially count that as a deployment tabletop achievement. Deployment tabletop achievement, just set up properly and at least make sure, knowing what you knew going in, that you liked the way it was set up. And this can also a lot of these kind of blend together because the setup can also sometimes lend itself towards that visually pleasing, because maybe you have like I have all my stuff in a firing line, or maybe I'm set up for a pincer maneuver, or something like that, or maybe I set up and I'm set up in a way where I'm going to miss obstacles and miss difficult terrain for a war game or something like that. So if you're pleased with the way everything was set up, then that certainly counts as a tabletop achievement. Remembering to use all the tools at your disposal. This applies to everything, but it's a really big deal in games like X-Wing that have millions of upgrade cards. I'm exaggerating with the millions, but if you've ever put upgrades on every single unit for wargaming, or in other board games, if you've ever like purchased upgrades or gotten extra cards and forgotten to use them, if you can make it through a game remembering to use all the tools at your disposal, that's definitely a tabletop achievement. So, I mean, and again, it doesn't matter if you lose at this point. At least if you remember to use everything, especially if that's something that you struggle with. I have definitely struggled with it before, especially when I put an upgrade on every single ship. I've had games where I've used really, really expensive upgrades. One of the biggest times I failed in this particular achievement was playing X-Wing Epic, because you have so many special Epic only upgrades. I remember putting a whole bunch of stuff on a Tantive 4 CR90 Corvette, and I had tons of upgrades on there. Didn't use any of them the whole game. And I realized later on, like, in every turn I would say, I'm gonna remember to use this next turn, and I would forget, and I would forget, and I would forget. So if I could go back, even losing that game, if I could go back and remember to actually use the stuff, counts as a tabletop achievement as far as I'm concerned. So what else? I'm going to talk a little bit more about upgrades. Using uncommon upgrades. Okay, so if you're playing in a type of game where like there's certain things that are never chosen, certain things that are never selected, like, well, we never use environmental gear in Star Wars Legion, we never used proton torpedoes. Maybe go back. And a lot of this is going to apply to X-Wing 1.0, because 2.0 everything's going to be new, so we won't know what's really common and uncommon for a while yet. But go back in X-Wing and you run a whole bunch of X-Wings with torpedoes, and then try to actually see how many you can fire, because people aren't going to expect torpedoes at that range 3 where they don't get their extra die. So pick something that's a little bit uncommon and try to run that just to change things up. It definitely would be a tabletop achievement, picking stuff that's just not expected. I mean, that's what won X-Wing Worlds is the ions and the the Brobots with ions, right? The IG-88. I mean, people weren't expecting that. That wasn't the meta. Pick something non-meta and bring it in. And this can apply to regular board games as well. And maybe it's more along the lines of just going a different path that isn't necessarily optimal to success. And maybe you'll win, but maybe you won't. Either way, maybe your opponents won't see that coming. I actually have done something like this in Zombicide from time to time, because it's a cooperative game. I will sometimes go around and just open a whole bunch of doors and kind of trigger a bunch of extra zombies just to shake things up a little bit. People don't expect you to do that in a cooperative game, to kind of sabotage the team, but you got to make a cooperative game interesting. Again, tabletop achievement. So does your build synergize? So this, again, is going to be more about wargaming, but it also applies to any type of board game where you're acquiring upgrades and building upon a strategy. If it's an engine building game, are you building your engine effectively? Even if you lose, did you build a good engine? If it's a war game, are you building upgrades that trigger off of each other? Maybe somebody passes a focus to another ship that benefits from having more than one focus, and did you actually get to do that? Does your build have synergy, and did you get to use that synergy in game? Maybe you're trying to run Dash Rendar with a heavy laser cannon, and what you don't want to have happen is not get those heavy laser cannon shots. And maybe you have another ship that gives Dash rerolls with that heavy laser cannon so that he can spend his time doing barrel rolls. Do you get to actually do the stuff that your build is designed to do? Even if you lose, at least if you put together a build that had synergy, like this part works really well with this part, that's why I put them both in the build, and then this third part really completes the package. If you get to do, that trifecta, then that's definitely a tabletop achievement. So the build synergy and actually making that synergy work. Another one is, if you don't think you're going to be able to win, maybe you just pick one target, one enemy unit that you want to destroy. Like, pick a goal early on in the game that you want to achieve. Whether it's just making sure that this other player who beat you last turn, maybe you make sure that they don't win. Or, well, again, we don't want to grief, we don't want to troll people, but maybe you just don't want to come in last place. Or maybe you want to make sure that that one person doesn't claim that trophy in this board game. Or maybe you're playing Twilight Imperium and you want to make sure that nobody else claims that center Gallius Rex, or not Gallius Rex, Mechatol Rex. I'm getting different genres confused here. Or maybe you're playing Rising Sun and you want to get the Daikaiju Godzilla monster, and you want to use that to just pick one goal. I want to just storm, and knock out bases on the last turn, because even if I lose, I've picked one thing that I wanted to do, and that was destroy, Japan with Godzilla. Got it. And for wargaming, maybe all I want to do is kill Darth Vader. That's all I want to do. I'm going to find your Darth Vader wherever they are, and that applies to every game, and kill him. If I kill Darth Vader, done. Or if I kill your commander, done. Or if I kill your biggest ship, done. So you can totally like make sure that you have at least one goal in mind. Tabletop achievement, absolutely. Maybe you pulled off a great maneuver. Okay, now this one applies more to wargaming. Maybe you were able to get something just right. So like, let's take Legion, right? You've got these compulsory moves with the snowspeeder, and maybe you were able to fit it just in perfectly so that you had that front and back shot. Perfect maneuver, landed in the sweetest possible position. Maybe you still go on and lose, but you did have that one amazing maneuver, and so you can tap yourself on the back and say, gaming achievement, done. X-Wing, one time I set up the quick draw, front and back, had 2 targets, both at range 1, and I was outside of both of their firing arcs. It's like, it was the perfect maneuver. I believe I lost that game, but I did have both like a Boba Fett in one arc, and then I think Dengar in the other. Well, not Dengar, but it was somebody who didn't have a turret. Basically, or I was maybe out of Dengar's front arc. I don't remember exactly what the ships were, but I did get that quick draw set up, both front and rear, range 1 shots, and I landed, and it was like the perfect storm. For Armada, that might be maneuvering just outside of maneuvering through an asteroid field and barely managing not to hit anything. Again, great maneuvering, awesome. Tabletop achievement. Very similar to that, a lucky shot. Maybe you have that one shot that's going right through obstacles and it's just not obstructed. Maybe you've got that shot that's just barely there, and then you're able to move afterwards. And in Legion, maybe I could just barely see you, and then I can shoot and then move, and then you don't get to return fire. Just having that one precision opportunity. Again, we're looking for like gems. We're looking for like a diamond in the rough here. If you get one great shot in a game, totally counts as a tabletop achievement. Let's go the opposite direction. How about a colossal failure, right? So let's say you've got a unit that has 1 health left. One more hit's gonna kill your commander. And your opponent rolls, and they roll a whole bunch of dice, but they manage to only get 1 hit. And you're like, aha, got you. So you said, no problem, I've got this. I've got defensive surge. Or maybe you're X-Wing, you get to roll a whole bunch of dice. It's range 3, you're behind an asteroid, you're gonna roll like 4 or 5 green dice, and you roll them all and they're all blanks. And let's say you even had a focus, all blanks, and you get killed and you can't do anything about it. And like, against all odds, that one shot actually blew you up. You know what? You can probably count that as a colossal failure. How often are you gonna roll all blanks on all of those dice? Well, maybe some of you will say, you know what? It's happened to me more often than I would like to remember. I understand, but you can still count that as a tabletop achievement because it's a story to tell afterwards. Definitely cool. Similar to strangely rolling dice, I actually had an X-Wing evade die roll and land perfectly on its side to where 2 sides were both kind of up. And so does that count as the critical evade, where it counts as 2 evades? Of course it didn't, but it was definitely, I counted that as a tabletop achievement. And then story elements. I think story elements is a classic way to have tabletop achievements. Is there a narrative to this game? Is there something cool that you're going to be talking about, the next day? One of my favorites is Star Wars Rebellion for this. Again, Star Wars Rebellion is one of the greatest board games ever made, and one of the reasons for that is they've got so many of these achievements, so many of these awesome things that can happen. I can blow up the Death Star, but maybe I still lose. One of the coolest things that happened in one of mine and Sean's games is that I think it was Chewbacca that got turned to the dark side by Emperor Palpatine. And so we were talking about that for like a week later. We're like, oh yeah, we had this evil Wookiee shooting force lightning, that was a servant of the Emperor. All kinds of really cool elements like that. Maybe, and it can apply in multiple other games. And sometimes it'll take some creativity on your part if you're gonna like apply your own narrative to the game. But definitely having a cool story to tell during a game counts as a tabletop achievement. So that's just a quick list that I had of, for some tabletop achievements for you guys. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments below what your tabletop achievements are. I'd love to hear more about them. Also, I do want to remind you guys, there are still a few more days left to enter to win one of the X-Wing 2.0 conversion kits. All you have to do is become a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. I'm giving away 3 conversion kits, so those will be announced next week. I am going to be announcing them like crazy, so they're not all going to be at the same video, so you have to watch to the end of the videos. They will be announced though, and that is in the form of a cool stuff gift card. So then you'll just have to contact me and I'll get your contact information and we'll hook you up. So that's all I got for you guys today. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget, if you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends. Check out Crabbok.com. I want to thank all my patrons. Check me out on Patreon if you would like. We're also doing giveaways there as well. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.